ThinkTall Conversations brought to you by Barista. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for another great edition of ThinkTall Conversations with Barista. Once again, coming to you from the beautiful Barista Cafe, the new Barista Cafe in Mugegoda. ThinkTall Conversations with Barista talks to inspirational leaders who've actually thought tall in situations where they had to think out of the box, come out triumphant through all the trials that they've actually been put through. It could be personal, it could be professional. Those are the stories that we want to talk about. The successes, of course, will stay there, but the most important thing, the stories and the sacrifices that these leaders have to obviously go through to get to the success level is what we're going to be talking about. And today we have a very special guest on the show, and he's been with us before, and of course a brand name that Sri Lanka knows very well today. He is, of course, Hasib Omar. He is the CEO of Moose Clothing Company in Sri Lanka, and he is on the show with ThinkTall this segment. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me.
How are you doing, Hasib?
I'm doing really well. Top of the world, like I'd like to say.
Hasib, so what we're going to do on the show, like we actually had a brief discussion, is we'll start slow. We'll talk about your initial stages, how you got into Brandix as a management trainee, and how the experience has actually shaped you to become the executive director and CEO of Moose Clothing. So let's start with that. How was that?
Okay, so if we start, I had a long journey with Brandix, so over 10 years, and in variety of roles, say from operations to HR to variety of roles. And I probably failed in most of them and maybe did not too bad in a couple of those. So, but I think the biggest learning, if I take per se, I think during that period, if I can take one thing to really go back on, would probably be how it gave me, how it allowed me to work with other people and say respect other people with different opinions, and with a different, say, with a whole different viewpoint. And so we probably all of us had the same end goal, but how you get there is you can do it in a variety of ways. So I probably, if one single learning over those years, I'd probably take how I learned to respectfully and collaboratively work with others. So one of those, yeah.
So basically, you also were in a position where you encountered so many different individuals from different walks of life.
Absolutely. And say the other thing, so that, and then the other, probably one of the more critical things, if we was also say, which allowed me to succeed in sort of doing a clothing brand, was from Brandix, was actually got the know-how and learned actually how to make the clothes and gained variety of knowledge, of course, on different fabrications, how sewing is done, variety of things like that. And so what I'm trying to say is how learning from others who have much more know-how than what I did.
Right.
So which probably allowed me to use them in my journey after that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Now, of course, your grandfather started Brandix, right? And it's been given down by generations. The third generation, I believe, that's actually
Yes.
running Brandix at the moment. So how does the legacy of your grandfather, how has it influenced your approach into risk taking? Now, honestly speaking, Hasib, it was a risk that you took to start a brand called Moose, because you already had a successful brand in terms of Brandix, and they were importing some very good clothing brands around the world. So it was a risk that you obviously took to start your own brand. And how was your grandfather's influence into Brandix and the risk taking that he obviously put in influence your decision?
Yeah. So I think I would look at it like this. I think my grandfather, my uncles, all of them have a legacy of their own. And say, I think I would probably think of it too bigger shoes to fill those shoes. And what I realized is they did what they were passionate about,
Right.
and say they truly did what they were passionate about, and they put in a lot of work behind it. And while they were really doing it, I don't think at that time they were thinking about creating a legacy. So I'm hoping that I'm doing something which I'm really passionate about and I truly believe in. And maybe the legacy itself might, if I'm lucky, might be an end product of it. So I like to think of it like that, and sort of try to do, I keep focused at what I am doing at the moment.
Well, it's doing pretty well at the moment. It's become a national brand, hasn't it? Wouldn't you agree?
We have been lucky. I
Right.
think so. If you, I think I would say we've had many challenges,
Right.
but I think say we've also had a lot of luck going our way and
Right.
things working out. So certain challenges, say during COVID and all that, what people may look at it as an import ban or whatever, probably gave us a little bit of edge and say level the playing field
Right.
a little bit for us to establish ourselves.
Right.
Now that imports are back on again and all that, now we can really see how we can compete in a true environment. So that will probably be the next challenge for us.
Right, right. You spoke about challenges, and you spoke about challenges as far as the company is concerned. Can you sort of share a pivotal moment in your career where you've actually faced a significant challenge that tested your determination and resilience, ultimately coming out thinking tall and coming out successful?
So I think I've had many challenges and setbacks. I think countless to go back to. But I think sort of the cliche saying what people go on about is a sort of you try and learn from your mistakes
Right.
and see how you can come back at it. And say me being a cricket fan, I try to look at it a little bit like a test match.
Okay.
You know, you could lose many sessions and still win the test match end of the day.
True.
So I think that's what I try to look at my setbacks as and the challenges we've had, and try and take them positively in a manner.
Has there been a pivotal moment, Hasib, for you? Do you recall a pivotal
Yeah.
moment?
So I think if it just were to pick, say, a pivotal moment, I would say it was really during the initial stages of lockdown.
Right.
You know, so we had just started. It probably we started in end of 2018, so we were very new, and
Just a few months.
or little over a year,
Over a year.
little over a year.
Right.
And what sort of say it would have when the lockdown happened. Also, we had just launched in India, so probably a month before the lockdown started,
Right.
and of course that didn't end too well. And so, say at that moment, I think the core group of people who all of us were working with, that team truly believed in this project. And then for us, it was then really, and then we sort of also had a little bit of pride in ourselves, not wanting to go back to the parent company for more funds and all that. So at that moment, we really wanted to figure out how do we, so say, what next? And so I think at that time we did variety of things to sort of keep the business and the cash flow going. Some of the things were, say, I think we started doing PPE equipment at that time, and say we got out a mask machine and started manufacturing masks. So just to keep the company and the cash flow going.
Right.
And so of course when things settled down, we got back to making clothes and doing what we were better at. But I think so. What I would sort of say is we'll be passionate about certain things and say life challenges us in different ways. So how you can keep the end goal in sight and navigate through those challenges is probably, I think, during those lockdown, COVID times, what really taught us, all of us as a core team. So,
Yeah, that it brings us to our next question. Honestly, talking about navigating your challenges, what really sort of motivates you to push boundaries? You've pushed boundaries. You've broken away from the parent group, right? But even though you're still there,
Yeah.
you're still around. But you've decided that, like you just said, that your grandfather did not necessarily realize that he wanted the legacy, but he has. And your uncles, of course, they have. And maybe you started the brand out of passion, but possibly going down the line, most probably you will also be leaving a legacy in terms
Fingers
of
crossed.
moose. Fingers crossed, most probably you will also be leaving a legacy in terms of moose. So, what motivates you to push boundaries?
Okay, in the apparel industry, so specifically with Moose, what really motivates me is, say, I truly believe that, how do you say, Sri Lanka has, in short, I believe that Colombo can be the next Paris in terms of fashion.
Really?
So if let me just go a little bit deeper into that. I honestly believe that.
Right.
So I think there is a lot of know-how of the apparel industry which is here already, and say from design, and say the apparel industry here manufactures for the best of the brands in the world, some of the best of the brands in the world. And I truly believe that Sri Lankan people are creative and passionate, who probably could say there could be many fashion brands coming out of Sri Lanka and which could go global. So I honestly believe that in that story and that journey, so that's what sort of pushes me to push boundaries, because say I want to really look at the brand. um, I would say it's successful once it becomes truly global.
Right.
So Sri Lanka has been a stepping stone. It has allowed us to test out our strategies, and some of them probably work well, some of them don't. So, but we truly are passionate about creating a global clothing brand which can come out of Sri Lanka. And I believe there is enough know-how in Sri Lanka, and there are enough creative and passionate people. Um, I think many others too can do it.
Now,
So.
thanks to your association with the Sri Lankan cricket team, the brand has actually gone global. But will the process of them accepting the brand as global is a different process altogether?
Absolutely. So that's the challenge, and that's the strategy we are trying to figure out. We haven't still, say, we have not been extremely successful in our global journey. We've tried many different entries and different points, but not happy with, probably still not happy with the results we are getting. I'm sure something will work out in the near future, and say, or we'll keep trying and being resilient at it. And hopefully the global also works out like how Sri Lanka has so far.
So
So
that's one of the main reasons about this type of conversation, the Think Tall conversation with Barista, is because everybody sees Moose as a brand that's actually made it. Nobody necessarily looks at Moose as a brand or Hasib as CEO, who's actually gone through the trials and the sacrifices to get to where it is right now, which is what we want to basically talk about. Now, there have been many setbacks for Moose before it has come to a position, and even you are not 100% satisfied with where it is right now.
yes,
Right? Which is understandable, right? But there have been many setbacks for Moose. What are some of the setbacks where you decided this was a wrong call? I don't think this is going to go on anymore, and you're just about to throw in the towel. What pushed you? Where was the resilience?
Okay, so say I think again, if we go back to the time, say as soon as we launched,
Right.
and say our whole idea, what we were thinking about at that point was going global. Say Sri Lanka was also part of the strategy, but at that time it was, we were really thinking about global, and our initial launch was in India. So then I think as soon as COVID hit and all that happened, we really needed to figure out, say, how we keep evolving and keep thinking about it. And at that time, say, we had to make a conscious call of pulling back. We sort of really stopped in those couple of years, stopped thinking about being global, and we said we'll uh, go really see how we can figure out Sri Lanka first, and be successful here and really make it, and then we can start our global journey again. So I think at that specific time, it probably really, for I mean, all of us involved in that group probably really felt like a massive setback. I mean, that that we're going to be really playing in a small playing field and all that. But looking back at it, I think that's probably one of the best things that has happened, because it really allowed us to learn from our mistakes in a small environment where the cost of failure was probably not too much higher, and also allowed the team to understand what really resilience and what it is all about. So I think now we are more ready and say to take on uh, to compete with the world as per se.
So
Yeah.
during that setback, how did your enthusiasm, your passion, because it's very easy when a setback happens, enthusiasm can be cut off. You can lose your passion, and the commitment, which you had an initial focus of going global, you had to pull back, which is not an easy decision to make. How did you keep your commitment, your enthusiasm, and your passion still going to overcome those obstacles?
So I think then again, when we go back, say the core team, which we sort of really were working on were probably the founding members of Moose. I think all of us really truly believed in that Sri Lanka story, what I was talking about earlier. So for us again, then it was all about keeping that in the back of our mind, and say focusing on what really needs to be done on that time, and say then if we really go back to it, what I think the other thing what we did is we sort of challenged ourselves as well as much as possible. How do you really put it, to challenge ourselves as much as possible to make things happen on what we were thinking about an end goal.
Right.
So yeah, if that sort of makes sense, what I'm trying to say.
So you basically wanted to challenge yourself as a core group of Moose at that point.
Yeah.
Knowing the fact that your whole idea of going global didn't work out, but now let's challenge ourselves to actually make our names locally first,
Exactly.
and then rethink that plan.
Prove to ourselves also that the idea is possible,
Right.
and there is some sort of success story to sort of sell,
Right.
and
Like proof of product.
exactly, proof of concept, and
Right.
how we can go ahead from there. So then it was sort of then again pulling back and say motivating ourselves with that goal,
Right.
while keeping the end goal in mind. So like I said, still we're nowhere close to achieving our end goal, but say we keep motivating ourselves with the victories we have, and the small wins which we get to keep ourselves going.
Exactly. I mean, enjoying those small wins are very important.
Absolutely.
Very, very important. But Hasib, you've also seen, I mean, you spoke about the fact that you do envision Sri Lanka being the next Paris of the world, because the fashion industry is thriving, the apparel industry is thriving. Also, at the same time, you do see lots of young entrepreneurs who are coming out with their own brands, who feel that they can actually come up with their own brands. What advice would you give to the aspiring individuals out there who would like to come out with their own brands to make a mark in the industry, taking a look at your journey and your achievements with Moose?
So I think my advice probably to people starting would sort of be twofold. One, I would sort of tell them to really to pick a category on which market segment they want to cater to. And I think if they focus on that and understand the needs of the consumers, I think a lot of the new brands which are starting can really be successful. One point from marketing perspective or branding perspective. And number two, I think what also would surprise people, I think people who want to start brands who are not who are not really associated with the apparel industry, I think they'll be really surprised with the amount of know-how in Sri Lanka, a lot of how many people actually have the know-how of manufacturing and designing clothing. Right. So I think if they can connect with the correct people and get the branding strategy right, I think a lot more clothing brands which are starting, the new clothing brands which are starting, can be successful.
Is there still room for more clothing brands in Sri Lanka? Aren't we saturated, don't you think?
I think there's a lot of room.
There is?
Because why do I believe that is, I think there's a lot of how do we say, people moving from an unorganized market to mom and pop shop sort of thing,
Right.
to more organized markets. So if you take for an example, I think even rurally, people would rather shop for clothing in a sort of department store sort of size setting. And there are many stores which have come up all around Sri Lanka, say, who sort of cater to that customer experience. And a lot of those places are, I think, truly looking for great product with a brand. I think people would rather wear clothing and be passionate about which has a brand to it, rather than buying sort of stock lots or leftover manufactured products. So I truly believe that there is space, because there's a lot of retail moving from unorganized to the organized market. So I think there's a lot more space for clothing brands to come up.
Personally, I mean, we're looking at some of the stories that do make an impression are the stories of struggle of leading individuals and successful individuals like yourself. Now, we spoke about this. You spoke about the tough times that the brand has had to have. In terms of personal setbacks in your life, when you do encounter personal setbacks, do you have a support structure you can lean back on to help you to get back and move on? There are certain things that you could actually mention about.
Absolutely. I think so. A couple of say, from a support structure, the family, the wife have been extremely supportive, and then the other part of it, I think, from a corporate part of it, I truly believe that mentors can make a massive difference. So I think one side from your personal, your family and all that backing you, but from the other side, I think um, different mentors, I think, have helped me over the years in variety of struggles and challenges I've had. So I believe people sort of underestimate how much of an impact mentorship can make. I think if people are guided correctly, it could truly make a difference.
You encourage young leaders to reach out to established individuals?
Established anyone who you sort of respect and have mutual respect for.
Right.
It doesn't really have to be established, because
And it doesn't have to be in your line of work, does it?
no, exactly.
Right.
Truly, probably it helps having mentors who are not in your line of work, because they will challenge you in different ways than what you're sort of thinking about.
Right.
And sometimes some of the most stupidest questions can be the most obvious answers, sort of, which you being in the industry might not really think about. So,
Well, Hasib, we're into the final bit as far as our conversation is concerned. Looking ahead, what are your aspirations for future of Moose Clothing Company, and how do you plan to continue innovating, expanding the brand while still staying true to your values and, of course, your vision? Because your values and vision can change when you need to push the boundaries, so to say.
absolutely. So I think, like I said, we truly want to be a global brand,
Right.
and say where we can sort of cater to, or where we know where we can fit in. We believe, say, lot of the global brands are public listed, so you can see their numbers, what they are.
Right.
And none of them are super profitable.
Right.
Okay, so they're most of the brands are their net margins are single digit.
Right.
And we sort of supply clothing to them, and our branding supplies clothing to them, and we can see so from retail price to the price we sell to them, there is a massive difference or massive markup.
Right.
And us as Moose Clothing Company, we're trying to think how we can sort of bridge that
Right.
for the world, and say how we can really cut that 70 or 100% margin where it's nobody's really making money, or brands are not making super profits, or the manufacturers are not making super profits, and the consumer is getting an extremely expensive product. So
Which can be cheaper.
which can be cheaper. So we're trying. I mean, we don't have a strategy. I mean, we don't know the right answer how it will happen, but that's a problem we want to solve. So that's where we are driving, and hopefully it happens at some point.
But you've taken those little steps, which actually has taken you quite far from the day back in 2018 when you started, haven't you?
Absolutely. So, say, I think that's sort of what we're trying to introduce in Sri Lanka as well. And we'd like to truly be seen as a value brand which offers exceptional qualities. So, hopefully, we can take those same value and vision global.
It hasn't been easy, has it?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not compared to what you see in the outside, not compared to what you see as a brand on social media, it really hasn't been easy.
No, there's been a lot of how do we say setbacks and say because from the time we started, few months after we started, it was the Easter attacks and the retail went down, and after that, COVID, economic crisis. So it has been a crisis after crisis ever since we launched. So this year is probably been the first smooth year we've had, and we're looking forward to it. So we're really looking forward to
A good year.
good year, absolutely.
Well, Hasib, thank you so much for coming in. It's been an absolute
Thank you
pleasure.
very much for having me.
It's
Thank
been
you.
great. So, ladies and gentlemen, there he goes, Hasib Omar, CEO of Moose Clothing Company, and giving you the triumphs through the trials. Again, enjoying those small wins is very, very important. And as you can see, making sure that you bounce back from setbacks, you're resilient to those setbacks is also important. That's what makes those young leaders in Sri Lanka shine through despite the setbacks and despite the global economy crisis, so to say, Sri Lankan economy crisis, so to say. There's a lot to actually basically go through. Anyway, we've got more great and inspiring leaders coming up right here on Think Tall with, of course, Barista. Thank you so much. We'll see you at the next episode.